Somewhere inside you is a version of your life you have not lived yet, a business you have not built, a body you have not earned, a relationship you have not repaired, a peace you have not found. That version of you is real. It is waiting. And every single day that you do not move toward it, someone else or something else, time, circumstance, opportunity, is collecting the price you refuse to pay. Potential is not a gift. Potential is an invoice. And the invoice always gets paid, either now in discipline or later in regret. There is no third option. There is no version of life where you simply keep your potential untouched and unspent and nothing is lost. Potential left unpaid does not sit quietly in a drawer waiting for you. It rots. It turns into the ache you feel at 35 when you realize the dream you carried at 22 is still just a dream. It turns into the flinch you feel watching someone else build the thing you always said you'd build eventually. So before we go any further, I want you to sit with one sentence. You are not behind because you lack potential. You are behind because you have not yet paid for it. Hold on to that sentence because everything else in this video is going to build on it. We are not here today for another dose of vague inspiration that feels good for 10 minutes and changes nothing by tomorrow. We are here to look honestly at the exact mechanism that turns potential into a real life and the exact mechanism that lets potential quietly expire while you wait for a feeling that was never going to arrive on its own. Problem identification. Here is the lie that keeps millions of people stuck. The belief that potential is enough. That because you have talent, because you have a good heart, because you mean well, life owes you something. It does not. Potential without payment is just a story you tell yourself at night to feel better about a day you wasted. Most people are walking around full of potential and empty of evidence. They can tell you what they're capable of. They cannot show you what they've built. They talk about the businesses they're going to start, the bodies they're going to build, the books they're going to write, the relationships they're going to repair. Always in the future tense. Always one day. Always when things calm down. And things never calm down. Because calm is not a season that arrives on its own. Calm is a discipline you build, brick by brick, out of decisions nobody else sees you make. Look closely and you'll notice a pattern. The people who stay stuck are rarely lacking ideas. They have notebooks full of ideas. They have folders of plans, vision boards, half-finished courses, gym memberships gathering dust. What they lack is not vision. It is the willingness to convert vision into payment, to trade comfort for output, day after day, long after the idea has stopped feeling exciting. And here's the part that stings the most. Most people don't even realize they're choosing this. They think they're, quote, still preparing. They think they're, quote, waiting for the right moment. They think they're, quote, being strategic. But strip away the language, and what you're left with is simple. A refusal to pay, dressed up in vocabulary that makes the refusal feel respectable. The successful person and the stuck person are not separated by talent. They are rarely separated by intelligence or background or luck. They are separated by one thing and one thing only. Who actually paid the price and who kept waiting for a discount that was never coming? Rhetorical engagement. Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it instead of skimming past it, because the skimming is exactly the habit that has kept you from the life you say you want. How much of your potential have you actually converted into something real this year? Not planned, not imagined, not posted about, converted into a finished project, a changed habit, a repaired relationship, a number that moved. How many times have you said, I'm not ready yet, when the honest truth was that you were not willing yet? Readiness is a myth most people hide behind. You don't become ready and then act. You act and readiness catches up somewhere in the middle. What would your life look like right now if you had paid the price on the dream you've been carrying for the last 5 years, instead of carrying the dream and quietly avoiding the price every single day? And here's the one that should sit with you the longest. If nothing changes, if you keep doing exactly what you're doing at exactly this pace, with exactly this level of commitment, where are you in 5 years? Be honest. Don't answer the question your ego wants to answer. Answer the question your bank account, your body, your calendar, and your relationships would answer for you if they could speak. Let that question sit for a moment before you keep watching. Most people scroll past the question that could have changed their life. Don't be most people today. One more, and this might be the hardest one of all. If a stranger watched a recording of your last 30 days, every choice, every hour, every excuse, would they describe you as someone paying the price for their potential or someone managing the appearance of trying while quietly protecting their comfort? You already know the answer. You knew it before I finished the question. Reframe/insight. Here is the shift you need to make today. Stop asking, what am I capable of? Start asking, what have I paid for? Capability is cheap. Everybody is capable of something. Payment is rare. Payment is what separates the dreamer sitting in the stands from the competitor standing on the field, covered in the evidence of effort. Think about a farmer. A farmer does not get to harvest potential. He does not walk into spring, look at a field and say, "This field is so full of potential, I think I'll just wait and see what grows." Nothing grows from waiting. The farmer plants in seasons no one applauds. He wakes before the sun, while the field is silent and the harvest is invisible. And he pays the price of effort on a day when there is no reward to show for it. He pays that price for months, not because he can see the corn, because he trusts the law. What you plant in private, you eventually harvest in public. Your potential works the same way. It is a field, not a finished product. And fields don't respond to wishing. They respond to seeds, to sweat, to consistency, repeated long after the excitement of planting is worn off. A field doesn't care how talented the farmer is. It only responds to what was actually planted and tended. So the question is not whether you have potential. Everyone reading this has potential, more than they've ever used. The question is whether you are willing to become a farmer of your own life, to plant when no one is watching, to tend what is invisible, to trust a harvest you cannot yet see, on a timeline you don't fully control. Not X, but Y. It is not your talent that determines your future. It is your willingness to pay, repeated until payment becomes identity. This is also why some people who seem less gifted end up surpassing people who seem destined for greatness. It was never really about the seed. Two seeds of equal quality produce wildly different harvests depending entirely on how they were tended. The person who pays attention to their field every single day, pulling weeds before they spread, watering before the ground cracks, will always outproduce the person who simply admires their own seed and assumes its quality guarantees the outcome. Your potential is the seed. Your daily payment is the tending. Stop admiring the seed and start tending the field. Deep exploration. Body. Now let's go deeper. Let's break down exactly what it means to pay the price for your potential. Because most people nod along with the idea and never apply it. I want to give you 6 truths, 6 payments, 6 places where most people quit and where you are going to learn to stay. I'm not going to give you abstract philosophy here. I'm going to give you the exact lens successful people use, whether they say it out loud or not, to turn raw potential into a real, livable life. Write these down if you need to. Better yet, come back to this list the next time you catch yourself making excuses, because you will catch yourself making excuses. Everyone does. The difference is what you do in the 60 seconds after you notice it. 1. Potential is not entitlement. It must be earned. The first lie to kill is the idea that being talented or being a good person entitles you to success. It does not. Life does not distribute outcomes based on how deserving you feel inside. Life distributes outcomes based on what actually gets paid for, in real effort, on real days, whether you felt like it or not. You see this everywhere once you start looking. The person with the most natural talent in the room is rarely the one who ends up on top. Talent gets you noticed. It does not get you finished. The person who finishes, who actually builds the thing, ships the product, writes the book, runs the marathon, repairs the marriage, is the one who treated their potential as a debt owed, not a gift received and admired from a distance. Think about every person you've ever watched coast on potential. The naturally gifted athlete who never trained hard because talent always carried them, until it stopped carrying them, because everyone else eventually catches up to people who refuse to work. The brilliant student who never finished anything because being smart felt like enough, until the world stopped grading on intelligence and started grading on output, on shipped work, on results that exist outside the classroom. Potential has an expiration date. If you do not convert it, it does not stay neutral. It calcifies into something worse than failure. It becomes regret with a side of, I could have if I had only tried. Here is the truth you need to install today. You do not owe the world your success, but you owe yourself the attempt. Every gift you were given, your mind, your health, your time, your opportunities, the people who believed in you, comes with a bill attached. And the bill is simple. It is called effort. Pay it daily in small, honest amounts, or watch the interest compound against you in the form of a life smaller than the one you were capable of living. 2 people start with the same raw ability. One says, I'm talented, so things will work out. The other says, I'm talented, so I owe it a real chance. 5 years later, the first one is still explaining why things haven't worked out yet. The second one is living proof that talent paired with payment is unstoppable, and talent alone is just an unused asset gathering dust. I knew 2 musicians once, in different stages of the same story you've probably watched play out in your own circle. Both had real ability, the kind of natural ear that takes most people years to develop. One of them coasted on compliments. People told them how good they were, and that praise became a substitute for practice because it felt almost as good and required none of the discomfort. The other treated every compliment as a reminder of unpaid potential and went home that same night to work on the exact weakness someone had politely avoided mentioning. A decade later, one of them still plays the same handful of songs at the same small gatherings, beloved by friends, unknown by anyone else. The other built a career out of an ability that, on paper, started out identical. The difference was never the ear. It was who actually paid for what the ear made possible. Stop waiting to feel entitled to your dream. You are not entitled to it. You are invited to earn it. That invitation does not stay open forever, and it does not announce when it's about to close. There's a quiet kind of arrogance hiding inside the entitlement mindset, and most people never notice it because it doesn't look like arrogance from the inside. It looks like frustration. It looks like, why hasn't this worked out yet? I'm a good person. I try hard. But strip away the self-pity and look at the actual ledger. Did you really try hard, or did you try hard for a few days and then quietly lower your effort while keeping the same expectations? The world is not impressed by your intentions. It only responds to what you actually deposited. Intentions don't compound. Action does. Remember this. You become what you think about all day long. If you spend your days thinking about what you deserve instead of thinking about what you're willing to build, you will keep attracting disappointment because deserving is a feeling and building is a behavior. And only one of those two shows up on a balance sheet. Switch the question today. Not what do I deserve, but what have I actually built this week that proves I'm serious about this? 2. The gap between who you are and who you could be. There is a gap living inside every person. The distance between the self you currently are and the self you are capable of becoming. Most people never close that gap. They get used to it. They make peace with it. They start calling the gap realistic expectations instead of what it actually is, an unpaid debt to their own future self. Here's what nobody tells you about that gap. It does not close by accident. It does not close because time passes. Time passing with no deliberate effort just confirms the gap. Season after season, year after year, until one day you look up and you are 50 years old wondering where the person you were supposed to become went. The answer is uncomfortable, but it is honest. They didn't go anywhere. They never showed up because you never paid what it cost to summon them into existence. Closing the gap requires something most people are unwilling to do. Looking honestly at who you are right now, without flattering yourself and without destroying yourself, and then asking what specific, unglamorous actions would move you one step closer to who you could be. Not the whole leap, one step. Discipline is not built in leaps. It's built in steps repeated so many times they stop being actions and start being identity. Picture two people standing at the same starting line, with the same raw ability and the same opportunities in front of them. One of them treats the gap as a wall, something fixed, something to accept, something to explain away with circumstances, bad timing, or other people's advantages. The other treats the gap as a measurement, a number that tells them exactly how much work is left. Nothing more, nothing less. No judgment attached, no excuse required. 5 years later, the first person is still standing at the same starting line, slightly more bitter, slightly more convinced that life is unfair to people like them. The second person is unrecognizable, not because they were luckier, because they treated the gap as information instead of identity, and they closed it, one disciplined day at a time, even on the days it felt like nothing was changing. You have a gap too. Stop being afraid to look at it directly. The gap is not your enemy, no matter how uncomfortable it feels to measure it. Your refusal to look at it and your refusal to close it is the real enemy. And it has been winning by default for longer than you'd like to admit. I think of two coworkers who started the same job on the same day with nearly identical resumes. One of them spent every lunch break scrolling, every evening unwinding completely, every weekend recovering from a week that hadn't actually demanded much recovery. The other spent small, unremarkable pockets of time, 20 minutes here, an hour there, building a skill nobody at the office had asked them to build. Nothing dramatic happened in month 1. Nothing dramatic happened in month 6. But by year 3, one of them was running a department, and the other was still wondering why opportunities kept going to the lucky ones. There was no luck involved. There was a gap, and only one of them paid the price to close it, in increments too small to notice on any single day. Most people avoid measuring the gap because measurement feels like judgment. It isn't. A scale doesn't judge you when you step on it. A bank statement doesn't judge you when you open it. They just report. The discomfort you feel when you finally look honestly at the distance between where you are and where you could be is not the gap punishing you. It's the first honest data you've had in years. And honest data is the only thing that has ever produced real change in anyone's life. Here's a practical way to start closing it. Stop measuring yourself against the finished version of someone else's journey. The person 10 years ahead of you who makes it look effortless now. Measure yourself instead against the version of you from 90 days ago. Are you closer to your potential than you were 3 months ago? Or have you been standing still while calling it a season of rest? That single comparison repeated honestly every quarter, will tell you more about your trajectory than any amount of comparing yourself to strangers ever will. 3. Comfort is the tax on unfulfilled potential. Nobody warns you about this one, so I will. Comfort is not free. Comfort is the most expensive thing you will ever purchase because you do not pay for it with money. You pay for it with the currency of your future. Every time you choose the easier option, the extra hour of sleep instead of the workout, the show instead of the side project, the silence instead of the hard conversation, the scroll instead of the study, you are not avoiding a cost. You are deferring it. And deferred costs do not stay the same size. They grow quietly in the background while you tell yourself everything is fine. The discipline you avoid at 25 becomes the regret you carry at 45. The hard conversation you postpone this month becomes the relationship you lose this year. The workout you skip today becomes the health crisis you face in a decade. Comfort feels like savings in the moment. It is actually debt, quietly accumulating interest you will eventually be forced to repay, usually at the worst possible time with the least amount of strength left to handle it. Here is the test of whether comfort is running your life. Notice what you do the moment something gets difficult. Do you lean in or do you look for an exit? Most people have built an entire identity around finding exits, calling it self-care, calling it balance, calling it listening to my body. When the honest description is simpler and far less comfortable to admit, they are avoiding the price, and they have found a vocabulary that makes the avoidance feel virtuous. I am not telling you to punish yourself. Rest has its place. Recovery has its place. A wise person knows the difference between strategic rest and constant escape. But there is a difference between rest that restores you for the next push and comfort that quietly replaces the push entirely. One is strategic. The other is surrender wearing a nicer outfit, dressed up in language that sounds healthy. Ask yourself, today, right now, without rushing past the question, where in my life have I mistaken comfort for peace? Where have I told myself I'm being kind to myself when really I'm just avoiding the bill that's already coming due? Find that place. That is exactly where your next payment is owed. And the longer you wait, the larger the bill becomes. Think about the two kinds of tired that exist in this world. There's the tired that comes from pushing towards something that matters. The tired that leaves you proud when you lie down at night, even if nothing dramatic happened that day. And there's the tired that comes from avoiding something that matters. The heavy, directionless exhaustion of a person who spent their energy escaping discomfort instead of facing it. Notice which kind of tired you feel most often. If it's the second kind, comfort isn't actually resting you. It's draining you slower than effort would, while convincing you it's the gentler option. I've watched people confuse a comfortable life with a good life for years, and it always ends the same way. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in a quiet, creeping disappointment that shows up around middle age, when the bill for all that avoided effort finally arrives with the full weight of compound interest attached. Don't let that be your story. The price today is smaller than the price later. It will never be smaller again than it is right now. There's a version of you, right now, sitting comfortably while reading this, who will look back on this exact moment in 5 years. Either they'll remember it as the day they finally got honest about the comfort that was costing them their future, or they'll have forgotten this video entirely, having let it pass through them the way most content does, changing nothing. Which one of those two people are you going to be? That answer is being written today, not in some distant, more convenient moment. 4. Discipline is the currency that buys your future. If comfort is the tax, discipline is the currency that actually purchases something worth having. And like any currency, it only has value when you spend it, not when you admire it, not when you talk about it, not when you post quotes about it on a Sunday and forget them by Wednesday. Discipline that stays in your head is worthless. Discipline only becomes valuable the moment it becomes behavior. Repeat it until it no longer requires permission from your mood. Here's what discipline actually looks like, stripped of the motivational poster version. It looks like doing the work on the day you don't feel like it, with no audience, no applause, and no guarantee that it will pay off. It looks like showing up to the gym on the day grief has hollowed you out, not because you don't feel the pain, but because you refuse to let the pain also steal your progress on top of everything else it has already taken. It looks like writing the 400 words you committed to, even though today's 400 words feel worse than yesterday's, and tomorrow's might feel worse still. It looks like having the conversation you've been avoiding for months, not because you're certain it will go well, but because avoiding it has already cost you more peace than the conversation ever could. Discipline is not the absence of difficulty. Discipline is the decision to keep paying the price after the difficulty has already arrived, and the motivation has already packed its bags and left the room. Anyone can perform discipline when it's easy, when the conditions are perfect, when the crowd is watching. Real discipline is what's left in the room after motivation walks out, and nobody is left to see whether you stay or follow it out the door. And here is the part that should excite you instead of intimidate you. Discipline compounds. Every payment you make builds capacity for the next one. The version of you who shows up today, broke down and unmotivated, and pays the price anyway. That version is buying interest for a future version who will find the next price a little easier to pay. You are not just building a result. You are building a person who pays prices without flinching, without negotiating, without needing permission. That person is unstoppable, and you are one disciplined day away from becoming them. Discipline rarely announces its arrival with a dramatic moment. It builds the way a callus builds, invisibly, through repeated friction, until one day you notice that something which used to hurt no longer does. The early mornings that used to feel impossible start to feel normal. The hard conversation that used to terrify you starts to feel manageable. That is not because the task got easier. It's because you got stronger from paying the price enough times that your nervous system stopped treating it as an emergency. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. One brutal week of discipline, followed by a month of collapse, builds nothing. A small, repeatable payment made every single day builds a person who can be trusted with bigger and bigger goals over time. So stop looking for the version of discipline that requires perfect motivation. That version doesn't exist, and waiting for it is just one more form of avoidance. Build the version of discipline that survives bad days, low energy, and zero applause, because that is the only version that ever actually changes a life. I think about two people trying to build the same habit. Say, an early morning routine aimed at finally making progress on a long postponed goal. The first treats motivation as a prerequisite. On the mornings they don't feel inspired, they sleep in, telling themselves they'll make it up on a day when they feel more ready. That day rarely comes, because waiting to feel ready is its own quiet form of comfort. The second person treats motivation as optional. They get up regardless of how they feel, do a smaller, honest version of the work on the hard mornings, and a fuller version on the good ones. A year later, the first person has an inbox full of half-started attempts. The second person has a finished body of work, built almost entirely on mornings they didn't feel like showing up, which, if you're honest, describes most mornings for most people. 5. Pay the price now or pay a greater price later. This is the truth that should change how you live starting today. The price for your potential never disappears. It only changes shape. If you don't pay it now, in the form of discipline, you will pay it later, in the form of regret. And regret is the most expensive payment plan that exists, because it charges you for the rest of your life, with no chance to ever pay it off completely, and no refunds for the years you can't get back. I want you to picture two future versions of yourself. The first version paid the price. They woke up early when no one made them. They had the hard conversations when avoiding them would have been so much easier. They kept showing up to the goal long after the excitement wore off and long after anyone else stopped paying attention to what they were doing. That version of you, 10 years from now, is not perfect. They still have struggles, still have setbacks, still have bad days. But they look in the mirror and they recognize a person who did not waste their one chance at this life, who paid what was owed while there was still time to pay it. The second version of you avoided the price. They told themselves later enough times that later quietly became too late. They are not a bad person. They simply spent their years protecting comfort instead of building a future. And now they are left holding the bill for every deferred payment, due all at once, with the added weight of years that cannot be lived again, no matter how much they wish they could go back and choose differently. You get to choose which version becomes real, not someday, today. The price you avoid paying today does not vanish into nothing. It waits for you, with interest, in a future you have not met yet but are actively building, one choice at a time, whether you realize it or not. Meet it now, on your terms, while you still have the time, the strength, and the years left to pay it in full. I want to leave you with a quote that captures everything we've covered. The pain of discipline weighs ounces, but the pain of regret weighs tons. Read that again. Discipline is heavy in the moment. The early alarm, the hard conversation, the workout you don't want to do. But it is light compared to the weight you will carry for the rest of your life if you let your potential go unpaid. Regret does not stay the same size either. Like the debt of comfort, it compounds. The longer you carry it, the heavier it gets. And unlike discipline, regret offers you no progress in exchange for the weight. It just sits there, reminding you of a price you could have paid for far less than what it eventually cost you. This is not meant to scare you. It's meant to free you. Because if the price only grows with delay, then the cheapest moment to pay it was always going to be today. Not next year, not when conditions improve. Today, while the bill is still small enough to pay without flinching. 6. Your payment becomes someone else's permission. There's one more truth I want to leave you with before we close, because it adds a weight to all of this that goes beyond just your own life. When you pay the price for your potential, you are not only changing your own future, you are quietly giving permission to everyone watching you to do the same. Think about the people in your life who are still waiting to start the business, waiting to leave the relationship that's not working, waiting to begin taking care of their health, waiting for some invisible signal that it's finally safe to try. Most of them are not waiting for more information. They are waiting for proof that paying the price actually works, that it's not just something people say in videos like this one. They are waiting for someone close to them to go first. You can be proof, not by lecturing anyone, not by telling people what they should be doing with their lives, but simply by paying your own price, consistently, visibly, without announcing it as a performance. People notice change that's real far more than they notice advice that's spoken. Your discipline, quietly practiced over months, will say more to the people around you than any speech ever could. This is the part most people miss about potential. It was never meant to be a private, isolated transaction between you and your own ambition. It ripples outward. The discipline you build today becomes the standard your children measure themselves against tomorrow. The price you pay this year becomes the evidence your friend needed next year to finally start their own. You are not just buying your own future. You are quietly redefining what's possible for everyone who is paying attention to how you live. So pay the price not only for yourself, but for everyone who needs to see that it can actually be done. Call to action and close. So here's what I need you to do. Stop waiting for permission to start paying the price on your potential. Nobody is coming to grant it to you. There is no certificate that says you're ready. There is no morning where every condition lines up perfectly, where the fear disappears and the timing is flawless. There is only the decision made today to start treating your potential like a debt instead of a decoration you keep on a shelf to admire. Pick one place in your life right now where you have been coasting on potential instead of paying for it. 1. Don't try to fix everything today. That's just another form of avoidance dressed up as ambition, a way of staying busy without ever paying the real bill. Pick the one area that has been quietly costing you the most and pay something toward it today. A hard conversation you've been avoiding, a workout you've been postponing, an hour of focused work on the thing you keep pushing to tomorrow. One honest payment made today on purpose. Remember this, the price of your potential does not go up because you're scared of it. It goes up because you keep avoiding it day after day, telling yourself you'll start when things feel easier. Every day you delay is not a day saved. It's a day added to the bill. With interest, you will eventually be forced to pay. Think about who is watching you right now, even if you don't realize it. A younger sibling, a child who is learning what's possible by studying what you do, not what you say. A future version of someone you love who will one day face their own gap between who they are and who they could be, and who will remember whether you paid your price or quietly avoided it. The way you handle your own potential becomes a quiet lesson for everyone who watches your life closely. Make it a lesson worth learning. And consider this too. Every person you admire, every name that comes to mind when you think of someone who quote-unquote made it, paid a price you never saw. You saw the result. You did not see the early mornings, the rejected pitches, the failed attempts, the doubt they wrestled with at 2 a.m. when no one else was awake to reassure them. They paid in private long before anyone applauded in public. That is the part the highlight reel never shows you, and it is the part that actually built everything you're admiring. There is no shortcut around that private payment. There never has been, and there never will be, no matter how many shortcuts the world tries to sell you. So stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. Stop measuring your unpaid potential against someone else's already paid result. Start where you are, with what you have, and begin making payments today, however small, however unglamorous, however invisible they might feel in this moment. Because in the end, your potential was never going to save you simply by existing inside you. It was only ever going to save you by being paid for, in discipline, in consistency, in the unglamorous repetition of doing the right thing on days when no one is watching and nothing feels like it's working yet. That is the whole secret. There is no other one hiding behind it. The only thing more expensive than growth is regret. Choose the bill you're willing to pay and pay it starting today, while you still have the years left to make it count. Your future self is already waiting on the other side of that payment. Don't keep them waiting any longer than you already have.